there are all these different cultures and different traditions in the different cultures. When somebody becomes enlightened, is it different because of the different traditions? And he said, no, enlightenment is the same thing. It's just how you get there is different. And so that process is unique to each person. We always interpret what we experience according to what we've experienced already.
Hello and welcome. I'm Sharon Gilmore Glover. I am thrilled to be your guide here on the Sharon Hour. Hello, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Sharon Hour. I am so excited about this. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited that you're here. And I'm mostly excited to introduce you to Fred Prack, who has been my mentor for 84,000 years or something like that. I can't actually remember. As I was getting ready to do this, I asked you to do it and we arranged this date. I started thinking about how did we meet? And I think we met through Tom.
Yeah.
That's how we met, but I can't remember how or when.
It was a long time.
It was it was probably...
You were just a child.
Yeah, as were you. Yes, a mere glimmer in my father's eye. It must be 35 years.
Yeah.
About that in actual chronological age. I've spent my whole professional life helping people learn how to learn. In fact, I started doing that before I even realized that was the journey that I was on. And as soon as we engage in a learning journey, we agree to fail and we agree to stretch. But school really doesn't prepare us for that, because when you agree to stretch and fail at school, you get failing grades and people get really angry and upset. So we get a mixed message because none of us can learn without failing. Babies and children learn to raise their heads and roll over in their cots and crawl and toddle by failing. That is how we fail. That's what teaches the nervous system, oh, well, that didn't work out or work out. And, for most of us, when we were teeny little tiny tots learning to walk, when we sort of almost got up or took a few steps and then fell over, everybody said, oh, up a girl or up a boy, well done, honey, do it again. That doesn't change. And so what I sum up in terms of what I've learned from you, I have lots of academic things about how people learn, and I've got lots of lived experience. But what I learned from you and what I still come to see you for is personal energy management. Because the more I stretch on purpose, and the more things that come into my life to stretch me that I don't necessarily ask for, oh yay, that was on my bucket list. I was hoping that would happen. Stuff happens in life. Being able to either remain or find my way back to a place of calm and grounded and find joy and the gift in it, even the crappiest of situations, is what has enabled me to live the kind of life that I live in the situations that life presents, and really has helped me to help the many, 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 many people at this point in my life that I've helped. So I'm very excited to have you here because I can talk about it, but really you're the horse's mouth, so to speak, in the best way possible. So Fred, you are, just, you tell us about yourself. And what I really want to start with is how long you've been practicing and how you found that, because at this point, consciousness and expanding consciousness and resources are amply available. When I was on the beginning of my conscious journey, there was stuff, not tons of it, but some. But when you started, in what decade was that?
That would be in the 50s.
Yeah, the 1950s. I'm guessing in local small town Canada or US, there were a ton of resources about expanding consciousness.
Well, I was really lucky because friend of my family, her husband had died and left her a fair amount of money, and she'd been traveling the world for a few years, and she came and stayed with us for a couple of weeks. And I was 13 and obnoxious, and somehow she liked me. And she had spent a couple of years in a Zen monastery in Japan, and so she taught me to meditate. And I've been doing that ever since. And it just fascinated me, the way she talked about it, and what consciousness is, what the essence is. And so I've been working with that my whole life, I guess.
About 60 years at this point?
65. Been meditating for 65 years.
Wow.
I've been teaching for almost 50 years.
Wow. Wow.
Different kinds of meditation, of course.
So talk about some of your teachers, please. You've had some masters.
I've had some privilege of being with some really wonderful people. The first was this friend of my family, and she was amazing. She would send me books for about, I guess, almost 10 years on Buddhism and Hinduism and the Vedas and all kinds of things. And I didn't hear from her other than that, but she would make little notes in the flyleaf of the book that I should pay attention to. So that was good. And then there was a point where I read a Time magazine article about Maharishi Mahesh Yogi and Transcendental Meditation. It was the article was ostensibly about TM on campus, but the person who wrote it was totally down on Maharishi, didn't want anything to do with him. He said the fellow was a fool. I think that's where the song "The Fool on the Hill" came from.
The Beatles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he described what Maharishi had said meditation was so clearly, and it just made sense to me. And it was more Zen than the Zen practice I've been doing. It's sort of like spontaneous, immediate, in the moment. And the source of what we are is always there. Right? It's pure awareness. And so if we can connect with that, then the quiet that you're talking about, the calm, the stability, the centeredness, is simply alive. But we get focused down on the things that are upsetting, and that controls our energy and how we interact with the world. So this magazine article was just, like I said, really negative about Maharishi and Transcendental Meditation, because the guy said, everybody knows that meditation is hard. Right, so this is all baloney. Anyway, I wrote to every university that was mentioned in the article, and I never got a response. And then this is in Toronto, and I was in Hamilton.
And this is in the 60s.
This was in the 60s, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was in Hamilton driving with a friend, and we were going up James Street, and there was a bookseller, the bookstore called The Bookseller, and it was in the basement of this building. And I said, "Oh my God, I haven't been here for years. Stop, I gotta go." And we almost had an accident because he just slammed on the brakes. And I jumped out before the car actually came to a full stop and ran down. And the first book I saw on the end of this bookshelf was Maharishi's The Science of Being and the Art of Living. And I grabbed it, and I didn't see anything else in the store. And my buddy parked the car and came into the store, and he started talking to the owner, who was at the back of the store. And the guy was standing there with his mouth open looking at me, because he'd just finished putting those books on the shelf and had been walking to the back of the store when I burst into the door.
Wow.
And so he said, this must mean that it needs to happen. So he gave me the name and address of the people who had put the books there on consignment. And they told me about the TM teacher in Toronto, who was like 3 blocks from where I lived.
Wow.
So I got...
So this was all really kind of meant to be.
Oh, apparently.
Yeah.
And so I got instructed, and I had a wonderful transcending experience from the beginning. And my friend and I, the fellow who was driving the car, he started at the same time. And we meditated in the center, and then we came to Burlington, where my parents lived, and I had an attic apartment. And we meditated for like 3 hours. You weren't supposed to, but we were just gone for 3 hours in just pure light, and that's what my friend was experiencing too. So this was a really good thing for me, and I pursued that and became a teacher of TM. And I spent 20 years teaching TM. And then just things happened, and it became a huge organization. And so I went back to doing Zen practice. And I taught all kinds of guided meditations and things like that, meditations for healing particular issues. But that's my history. So I'm still pursuing that. I think the main frame of reference is raising consciousness and enlivening consciousness rather than raising, because it's there to experience anything. We have to be conscious. Mm-hmm. We don't have any experience outside of consciousness. I mean, that's blatantly obvious, but nobody thinks about it that way, or very few people. So if we can be aware of what consciousness is, what pure awareness is, then we can start to live that. And our nervous systems, the more we experience it, the more our nervous system is supported while we're in activity, while we're thinking the thoughts and doing the things we do.
That's one of the huge things that I really know. Two things that many things that I appreciate about you, but two of the big things are like meditation. I understand why the man would write meditation is hard. I struggle to sit in meditation, try as I might for all of these years. It's just, I remember in a fit of throwing a temper tantrum, I said to you once, I don't know if you remember this, oh, I'm just going to give it all up and go live in a spiritual community. And you said, long pause, you're not disciplined enough. So give that up, Sharon, and find another way. But for me, sitting is not where I found that. And you have been so encouraging always for me to be me, where I am on my journey, and to meet as an educator, I meet people where they are. It's not about me, it's about them. It's wherever they are, whatever they need. And that's how I interpreted what you were saying to me, was meet myself where I actually am. And as I was learning from you, I've spent my whole career basically standing in front of people, talking, and when I get triggered, I can't say, could you just hold on I just need to just go sit in meditation for a little bit and I'll be back. I have to keep going. And certainly early in my career, I had lots and lots of circumstances where, especially when I started doing professional development for teachers, I was so young and I looked even younger, and it seemed to really trigger people. And I remember the very first time I ever presented at a conference, I was so nervous. So I was not remotely grounded. I wasn't knowing my power. I hadn't gone. They hired me to do this because I have this specialty, and I'm the only person in Canada between Nova Scotia and Alberta that actually knows this. So it's a new thing I got introduced to. I didn't own any of that. And one person in particular, he just tore me to shreds before I'd even really opened my mouth. And it took somebody else in the audience to say, I don't actually even know what this thing is that she's here to talk about. So could you sit down and let her just please tell me what it is, and then I'll decide if I think it's bullshit. And I was a basket case. I don't remember anything after that. Still, all these years later, they stayed, so I did something, like I opened my mouth and stuff came out. So I had to learn how to access that in the moment as this was happening to me, or adults or kids were struggling, or I taught outside for a long time, and I taught one particular program that was very prop intensive, And it was a very, very windy day. Everything was in a forest. And there were a whole bunch of props that were supposed to be there, including a big paper mache sun with varying sized ropes coming out of it to teach trophic levels in ecology, and how energy flows and decreases as it moves away from the sun. And there was nothing. There was no sign, there was no sun, there were no clipboards, there was like nothing. And I had 50 kids and 4 teachers looking at me. Like, okay, well, again, I can't say, could you just stay here because I need to just go meditate for a few minutes. So your probably most powerful teaching for me is about this is who we are, and it is love. Pure awareness is love. Just connect with the love.
Right. And it's the easiest way. Right. Everything is that, just in a different vibration of it. Everybody has their own experiences. Everybody has their own life. It doesn't matter what tradition a person's involved with. Right. Gravity works the same.
Yes, it does. Or sometimes gravity doesn't work that well.
Yeah, well,
and we get hurt.
But gravity's still doing what it does.
Yes, it does. You're quite right. Gravity is working just fine. We're not working with it.
And it's like awareness, pure awareness is like the gravitational field. It's there. And everything we experience is simply the field vibrating. Right, in all the quantum fields, and I'm not a quantum physicist, but in all the quantum fields, energy creates oscillations when it becomes activated, and that creates all the configurations of possibilities of that field. And it seems to me that this is exactly the same with awareness. All the experiences of consciousness, all of the thoughts we have, the emotions we feel, the physical things we do in our lives, they're all manifestations of consciousness. So it's always there, but we're not aware of it because it's the same. We're in education, we're trained to look at separations and differences.
Yes, we are. And weaknesses.
So, but the attention's always out there.
Yes.
It's not on what's happening inside. And that seems to be the biggest challenge. Right? So we have meditation techniques from all over the world. There are people who just can be present. And we have this experience of loving, which seems to be really important. People feel they want love, especially as children and teenagers and later on as adults too. But it's almost a driving force. And it affects the physiology, it affects everything. And if we can attune to that, then we have that grounding that you're talking about. Right? And one of the easiest things to do is just love everything. You see a squirrel, you send love. You see a blossom, you send love. The sun is shining, you send love.
That's easy to do for those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Sending love is less easy to do when it's someone just drove into the back end of your car.
Sure, but doing the practice with all the easy things makes it easier to do the love for the person who drove into the car.
That's the point of practice, isn't it? I tell clients that all the time. The whole point of practice is so that it's called practice for a reason. We need to practice to develop the habits so that when we get blindsided, something happens, either something really wonderful happens that's beyond our expectations or beyond our current sort of scope of experience, or something really awful happens, or anything in between, we need to be able to respond. And that comes from being able to practice, as opposed to react and be driven by the energy that it triggers inside us.
I think also that in any situation we come to, our unconscious minds put together a package of resources to fit the situation. The more tricks in our bag of resources, the more appropriately we can respond. But we don't have much to do with putting together those resources to fit the situation. It seems to happen spontaneously. So the more we can do, especially if it's a grounding experience, the more that can be lively in us, the more grounded we can be in those overwhelming situations that we don't expect.
So I am under the impression that over the years, your decades now, 6+ decades of lifelong learning on this, and from masters and from your students and your own lived experience, you have created your own, I think, unique process. Am I correct? That's what I think. Is that right?
But I think everybody has their own unique process, no matter what tradition they're part of. I remember asking Maharishi, there are all these different cultures and different traditions in the different cultures. When somebody becomes enlightened, is it different because of the different traditions? And he said, no, enlightenment is the same thing. It's just how you get there is different. And so that process is unique to each person. We always interpret what we experience according to what we've experienced already. And so that makes our particular path totally unique to who we are.
Do you have, if I were to ask you, so somebody is listening to this, they're not lucky enough like me to have had the very long relationship with you and had you as a teacher in my life for so long. Let's say we're meeting now and I'm at a place in my life where I'm experiencing expanded consciousness. I'm excited about it. I'm also thrown off by it. I'm thinking I'm a bit nuts at times. I'm thrilled and maybe terrified at the same time. How would you, and I say to you, I can't meditate, I can't sit, I can't do that. What do I do?
Well, I think the first thing is that energy determines everything we do, everything we experience. Right? It's the energy in the field that becomes lively. If there's too much energy, then it overwhelms us. If there's just not enough energy, then we're lethargic. We don't get to do too much. So if we learn to handle the energy, then we become the ones in charge of our experience. And that's the beginning of it. And then you can go deeper. Then you can look at what awareness is, what consciousness is in your experience. And consciousness is ubiquitous. I mean, it's everywhere the same. And like I was saying before, we're looking at differences. We've been trained, we've been programmed to look at differences. And so that's what determines how we experience the world. And
by differences, you mean we separate things into, we don't see it as the same. We see it as this is, well, that's obviously black, and this is obviously teal with some black in it. Teal and black, yes. So they're different. This is red.
Yeah.
That's different than this.
And the sky is different than the earth, and different. And you're different than I am, whatever. And so that's what we've learned, and it's really important to learn that so that we can function on this planet with physical bodies. Without the physical bodies, I mean, we don't have to deal with that nearly as much. But we do. And so we need to eat, we need to breathe, we need to eat good things and breathe good things. But that's a part of the process of having a body. In spite of all of that has to happen, right? We are conscious creatures, as all creatures are. Right? And so that consciousness is what we truly are. I mean, you've always been you.
I have.
Right?
Even when I tried really hard not to be, I really have always been me.
But the thing is that most people look at change as being bad. But all the changes that have ever happened, it's been you that's experienced the changes in your life, and the same with everybody else. Right? And it's not the emotions that we are. It's not the thoughts that we think. It's not the physical sensations or the condition of our body. Right? It's that consciousness that's experiencing. That's who we truly are. That never changes.
That is for me, that's a lesson that I work with all the time. I mean, I understand it and agree with it. I thought, yeah, I get that for sure. Completely congruent. Not so much. I mean, that's one of the gifts of living with a life-threatening disease, is that one of the surprises in the last 3.5 years was me being confronted by, what is my value? What is my value if I'm not working with clients, and I'm not growing my business, and I'm not increasing sales, and I'm not doing, activity to bring that in, and I'm not planning and being in control? And I thought I was way past that, and many places in my life I have moved past that, but it has brought me to that place of just knowing that what is essential is, always has been, and always will be, whether I'm even here or not.
And we put so much value on expectations of what we're supposed to become and what we're supposed to do in our lives, that it distorts our perception, right? And it prevents us from experiencing that source within, for the most part. And it's not that acquiring things, having a good income, doing all that is an obstacle. Right? It's part of it. I mean, if you like chocolate, you eat chocolate, right?
See, this is why I love you. You're not ascetic.
You really like chocolate.
Well, I do. I like wine even more, but yeah, I do like chocolate. So do you. We like chocolate together.
Yes. Yeah.
That is true.
But I mean, the whole thing is that whatever we do, whatever the resources that come together to allow us to respond to the moment, it's a package, right? And they're put together, even though it's unconscious, it's put together to respond to the moment. So if it's, the moment is that I have an opportunity to make a whole lot of money and you want to respond to that, those resources are in place and you do that thing, right? If you want to go the other direction, then you go the other direction. Right? There is no right or wrong at the level of consciousness. It's the socialization that determines what we've learned in school, determines whether this is right or this is wrong.
And from our families, from our first families as well.
Absolutely, that's part of the education.
Yeah, for sure.
They're the ones that start the education process.
They do indeed.
Like with walking and all that.
Yeah.
You were talking about before.
So one of the most powerful, there are, as I go through, and I have all these years, not just right now, but as I go through my days or weeks, like everyone, I have periods that are blissful, I have periods that are neutral, and I have periods that are incredibly challenging, like everybody in life, because that is the nature of life. It seems to me anyway, that's been my experience. One of the things I keep remembering, and it anchors me back, is I'm not in control. I can always be in charge. And being in charge means I am managing my own personal energy. So I'm not being steamrolled by my own energy. And for me, it works both ways. Either it comes up in such a roar that I just everywhere,
Yes.
or it exhausts me because I'm trying to keep such a lid on it that is not really flowing at all, and I get more and more and more tired, and less and less functional, and joy, like not even, forget joy, there's not even like, oh, this was pleasant, there's not even that, there's just, this kind of slow decline. So let's finish off and leave people with something simple that somebody who's watching this who does meditate and has that practice and it fills them up can do, and they can learn and practice so they can do in a moment. And people who are more like me who struggle to sit and meditate, I've found different, I meditate when I try to meditate all day long. A Hindu friend taught me that meditation is being present in the moment. It's not necessarily
Whatever
about,
the moment is.
Exactly, it's not about sitting on a pillow. And you have reinforced that. So what's something simple that we can share?
There's a whole lot of things. One of the simplest things is breathing. We were talking about this earlier. All living things on the planet are connected to the sun and the earth. And we're channels for the energy that go both ways. So the earth energy goes through us up to the sun, and the solar energy comes down through us to the earth. And, you know, dogs and cats and lions and tigers and everybody, everything, trees and plants, they're all part of that flow of energy. And so our breath can move energy. And so if we image, just imagine, and one of the fundamental principles of energy work is that energy follows thought. So what we intend is the thing that helps direct the energy. So if we imagine this channel and we take an in-breath, we can image the energy flowing up our back through to the sun. If we exhale, we can imagine the same thing going down through us. And unlike water can't go through a hose in two directions at the same time, energy does, right? You have two lamps side by side and you don't see where the light's crashing in between. It just flows through, it's just vibrations, waves. And so we can have that going all the time and strengthening that flow through us. And the membrane in the body, the fascia, also called deep tissue, is the medium for energy flow in the body. So as we do that more and more, the fascia relaxes and allows the energy to flow. When we're upset, it tightens and it blocks the energy. And so then you have that lack, that feeling of lack, and you just don't have the energy to get up out of the chair. So I think that's one of the fundamental things, one of the easiest things that we can work with.
I have been drawing on that specifically the last few days. It's been very, very busy. We're shooting this right around Christmas time, and we celebrate Christmas. Christmas is a time of year for me to turn love and gratitude into something tangible, and the way I do that is through baking and making chocolates. Coming back to chocolate, it all comes back to chocolate and wine.
The ground of the universe is really chocolate.
You know, I was in chemotherapy earlier in the week, so I don't have my normal pre-cancer journey energy level, and just as I noticed myself getting tired, really focusing on, as I'm baking, as I'm making chocolates, as I'm listening to music, as all of that is going on, and still being present. So the way I learned that was I did actually sit and I practiced, and I started with really short periods of time because I just wanted to be successful. And I can't remember what I started with, but I don't think it was even 5 minutes. And then I worked up to doing a little longer. I was really gentle with myself. You reminded me to be gentle with myself when I wasn't really gentle with myself. And now I can draw on it every time I need it. And I did that a lot in the cancer center and in the chemo suite, because that is a place where people are on really difficult phases of their life journey, and many people get very bad news. It's scary, it's isolating. We're living through a pandemic, so people can't have people with them a lot of the times unless they have a language barrier or something like that, and they need help. And so when I see people agitated, or there's a large group of people, and especially with the nurses who are just, they really are angels on earth. They are phenomenal. And I can see when they think no one's looking how exhausted they are. I do that with the intention of filling the entire universe with that energy. And I see a change. It certainly benefits me. And I see a change in people around me. Sorry, Fred.
I was just going to say, I think you can add to that just the energy flow with directing love from the heart, using that energy to. Sorry.
Take two.
I had it on the button there. Curiously.
Love is pure awareness. Right? Pure awareness is love. That's the main manifestation. And if we're loving, even just to the sweet things, then we cultivate the ability to do that. When you're in a situation where there are people that are really upset, you can send that energy. If you're doing breathing first, you can send that energy to those people, and it really has an effect.
It really has a material effect. The number of times that, especially during the COVID pandemic, many of the staff we're in a world-class cancer center. I am in a world-class cancer center. It is fortunately close to my home. Most of the staff that work in that center are specialized. And so when intensive care unit admissions were at their height in my area, much of the staff was deployed to help people stay alive during COVID. So wait times for cancer patients were very long. There were many, many, many more people than should be there. And cancer patients who are already stressed and sort of at or beyond the max of what they can cope with are now afraid that they're going to contact COVID. And as soon as I started doing that and got it flowing and then intended love and peace and safety, the agitation level just, it's like taking a pot off the boil. I have no idea if any of those people noticed, and it doesn't matter, but it just calmed down and things seem to flow better.
Yeah. And I think that can happen in families, between couples, between everybody in the world, and the Lord knows the world needs a lot of that right now. So anybody that can do that would help.
Mm-hmm. The whole point of the Sharon Hour is to share information, resources, tools. As Fred said, as you develop your own, I think of it as a big, well, it started as a toolbox, and now inside me I have this vast chamber that I open the door, and I have educational resources along here, and I have energy resources in another place, and it enables me to manage my own constantly evolving life experience. My intention is to live fully every day I'm alive for however long that is. So who knows what's going to come along in my life, and I don't want to miss it. I want to be able to show up and be in charge. And most importantly, it helps me be of service, which is why I'm here. So I really urge you to watch this over and over and over again. Practice the sun earth breathing. It really is simple. I mean, I really was able to do, well, I've been practicing for a while, but I did it while I was teaching grade 5. I did it while I was teaching high school students. I've done it going into really strong winds on canoe trips. When I've been scared on my horse in the cancer center, and when making Christmas treats, listening to music and trying to keep my dogs under control at the same time. So practice that, build up your own resources. Your community in particular, for the people who are waking up and understand it all starts from the inside out. First, we become the love and light in the world that we want, and then that's how we make the new earth. This is a really material way. It will help you, and we can make a difference in the world. Thank you so much for joining us. I look forward to seeing you again.